This
We are going to go
conference
ahead
will
and
now be
start.
recorded.
Good evening, everybody. It is Tuesday, October 20th at 6 p.m. This is the October meeting of the Architectural Review Board. Attending members this evening, this is a special meeting done over GoTo. Attending members tonight are David Humphrey, Allison Hughes, Sherry Green, David Riley, Leslie McAlay, and possibly Sean Brown will be joining us later in the meeting. This is a special meeting, so no other business will be discussed other than those items on the agenda. Getting right to that. First up, we have the Darien Fire Department. It's ARB number 2020. Hi, Sean Brown. Sean Brown did join us. Sorry, guys, or the ARB, our last member. ARB number 20, Darien Fire Department. I believe that is Dennis.
Dennis Smith is on the phone, and you have the application materials. This is for a storage shed to be placed behind the firehouse building. I've made a little Google Maps to show the firehouse building is here, running on the Boston Post Road. It's across the street from Mansfield Avenue, in front of the municipal parking lot and part of the fire department parking lot. Where they want to place this little storage shed would be in this back corner of the fire department's parking lot. You get access to that parking lot through the fire department parking lot, but also from Sedgwick Avenue. Sedgwick Avenue would be to the top right-hand side of the little map. Fred, could you go to the next sheet? It's the same area in a little bit larger version. I was just talking with Dennis a few minutes ago, and he said that this storage shed is for materials that are already at the fire station, some of which are stored outside. And this is the firehouse on the left side of the map. The Boston Post Road is on the far left side of the illustration. Firehouse parking lot is behind the building where this red car is. And then just on the other side of that landscaped area is where the storage shed is going to be in these shadows on this aerial photograph. And the storage shed is proposed to be 12 foot by 16 foot, 1 story high. There's a photograph that was submitted to the ARB members, and it shows the style of the proposed shed. And in speaking with Dennis Smith from the Darien Volunteer Fire Department, their proposed color scheme would be a creamed color shed with a white trim. So it would be very similar to what you're seeing in the photograph, but it would be cream color to kind of fade into the background rather than the gray that's shown on the picture. And it would be, again, in this back parking lot behind the fire department building. I don't know if the ARB members have any questions of Dennis.
I have a question, Sherry Green. What is the material of this in terms of cleanliness with the cream color?
It's texture 111 wood.
Okay. So could it be easily hosed down and kept clean?
Oh my God, yes. Yes.
Yeah, okay. Okay.
Yeah, it's stained. The wood will be stained. The texture 111 will be stained, and the white trim that goes on all the edges is painted white.
And that's wood, or that's the same product?
Wood.
Yeah, okay.
With an asphalt shingled ceiling.
I'm going to go down everyone one by one just to get everything's covered. And just a note to everyone, whenever you speak, whether it's your first time or you're speaking again a second time, please always introduce yourself and say who you are, and if you're a member of the board or what project you're working on. And if you're not speaking, please go on mute so we have limited background noise. First up will be Dave Humphrey, then Allison Hughes. Dave?
David Humphrey, ARB member. Looks good. What are you will be sitting right on the pavement of the parking lot, or you need to raise? Yep. Okay. Any ramps or anything necessary, or just? Not
There'll be a portable ramp that we'll keep inside.
Got it.
Some of the equipment we have wheels on it. Some of the equipment's very heavy. A lot of it we'll just pick up and put in there. We have a 175-pound drag dummy that's pretty scary looking, and that's always been outside. I'd love to get that inside so kids don't see it all the time.
Right.
Kind of looks like a dead body that's laying around.
No, it looks good. I assume it has a couple vents on the gable ends.
Yes.
No other comments.
No.
Great.
We
Thanks,
won't
Dave.
even be storing gas in it.
I'm sorry to cut you off there. Des, what did you say? Go ahead.
We will not be storing gas in it. It's just firefighting equipment, foam, essentials that are needed for drills. Just
Okay, thank
running
you,
out of
guys.
room. Thank you.
All right, Allison Hughes next, and then Sherry Green.
Allison Hughes, ARB member. I think it's a good choice. Looks good.
Thank you.
Right, Sherry, then Dave Riley.
Sherry Green, ARB member. I agree. I think it looks fine, and my questions were answered. So thank you.
All right, Dave Riley, and then Sean Brown.
Dave Riley talking. I like how you announce people on deck. So my only question is, what is there going to be any lighting? Like, do you need to run any power or anything to the shed?
No power will be run out to it. If we need lighting, it'll be portable lights.
Okay. All right. Other than that, I think any other comments were already covered. I have no exception to it. So thank you.
Next up, Sean Brown, and then Leslie.
Hey, Sean Brown, ARB member. It's approved from my point of view.
Okay. Leslie.
Leslie McCauley, ARB member. I don't know where the property line is, but is it within the setbacks?
Yes, we actually own the property behind 800 Post Road, and we own 848 Post Road, but it's definitely within setbacks. It's on the other side of the picket fence, the last parking space on the left corner.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, Dennis, that's about as smooth as it goes, the ARB here. So congratulations. Favorable report on our end. I will send you a letter that recaps the proposal at large and that favorable report. So thank you for your time. Any questions for us?
No, not at all. Thanks for your time. Dave, thank you very much.
All right, best of luck, Dennis.
Thank you.
And thank you for your service in town.
Thank you very much.
All right, ARB members, just a reminder tonight, by the way, we have a 7:30 hard cutoff. So I am going to be diligent about keeping us tight on our timelines and questions and such forth. Next up, ARB number 18, 2020. This is the ARB Bravita status report. I do not see them on the call. So I think we are passing over Bravita for another month. An update there for you guys. Dave and I have not heard from them on painting the vinyl, nor have we seen samples in the office or in person. So when we do, we will send an email around during the middle of the month, or we'll see them at our next agenda. Any questions? Okay.
No.
Thanks, guys. Okay. Next up, we've got ARB number 19, 2020. This is a continuation of the 7-Eleven Incorporated at 306 Boston Post Road. At our last meeting, we didn't give any report. We asked them to go back and resubmit drawings and proposals. I see Amy is back. Welcome, Amy. Thank you.
Hi.
Amy, I've got a couple of questions of you before you go into your presentation, but do me a favor first. Can you let me know who on your end is present and presenting for your group this evening?
Yes, so I'm here. I'm basically going to do introductions and then just a quick update on the sign at the end of our presentation. And then James Owens, who is our project architect, waving his hand. He is going to do the vast majority of our presentation. And then we also have Luke DiStefano, who's here in the event that there are any technical questions about the site or anything else that sort of technically fall in the engineering category. But we're certainly aware of your agenda, and we have the responses. James is going to go through the responses to the letter and the plans that we updated to do the vast majority of our presentation. And then we do have the various representatives from 7-Eleven on the call if necessary.
Okay.
And I apologize. This is James from HFA. I think, Amy, you're going to be the presenter, correct?
Correct.
So my bad. I hit a request.
Get that back over to you, Amy.
Thank you.
Okay, Amy, before you jump into the presentation, thank you for those intros. A couple back, how did your presentation go with your sign at the ZBA? Do you have a ruling on that yet, or is that still pending?
We do not. I will tell you, ZBA's focus at the moment is on the location approval, which is heavily focused on traffic and some of those considerations. We did talk about the sign, and one of the things that we submitted was at their request, and after some internal discussions, we are going to propose a monument sign instead of the pylon sign. A copy of that was just approved and was shared with the staff and is included in the presentation materials we have. So it would be in the exact same location as the pylon sign. It is almost exactly the same square footage. The previous pylon sign had been 48 square feet. This sign will be 46 square feet. So we still are asking for variances. And there were some technical questions the ZBA had about the sign, and they have the same plan that you had. And so we are updating the application materials to reflect that slight change. It's actually a reduction in our variance request from 48 square feet to 46. So that will be the subject, but I will say we spent an extensive amount of time on traffic.
Okay, that's good. So I'm going to let you guys, we'll do the sign part later on. But again, ARB won't rule on that until we have ZBA's clearance on what you guys are doing. But if you would like to let us know where that stands, it'd be good to have the latest version, so we're ready to go when it gets approved at whatever level. Okay, so you guys received my letter. To recap, I asked you guys to go back and, based on our discussion, come back to us with a few new proposals, a few new options. I think we saw just one version come back, and for us, it looks like very similar, pretty much almost the exact same thing you guys presented before, with some alterations to some minor facade alterations to the design. If you guys could go and quickly recap any changes that were made, and then we can just quickly go into comments. That sounds good.
Sure. So let me I'm going to screen share, and I'll turn it over to James. We'll get started on the PowerPoint.
Great. Yeah, and I appreciate the opportunity here to present. I know you guys have a short time frame, so I'm going to jump right in it. Amy, I'm going to start with slide number 2, because I think this is just kind of a good recap of where we left off last time, and maybe some of the approaches that we took to address some of the concerns. I mean, we kind of worked diligently with our client, looking at all the comments, the neighbors' comments, and trying to figure out how to incorporate a lot of these ideas. So again, just kind of big picture wise, there's some feedback and discussion about, just the concerns about the colonial revival style that we had presented, and maybe to look at some other different architectural styles. We did look at that. We felt like the neighboring context, there was no immediate style building architecture that was kind of jumping out at us, and we felt like given the neighborhood and everything else that was going on, that the colonial style was going to be an appropriate solution to this project. And then again, we'll kind of dive into some of the detailing that we did. So we did keep with the colonial revival. There was some concerns raised about the materials that were presented, vinyl being one of them, and maybe non-authentic materials. So we did revisit those, and we've replaced the vinyl with a fiber cement siding. Again, it's not a true wood, but it gives the look and appearance of wood siding. It's a better maintenance product. There was some discussion about And my hope is that you guys can look through the package as I'm using this as talking points, and then I'll go to the slides specifically. But again, I'm just trying to reframe the conversation here. So there was some discussion about the vinyl brick and the vinyl siding being a little bit unnatural, and so we did replace the vinyl. We presented in this package some alternative materials for consideration, but again, we still felt like the siding and brick were kind of common with the New England theme that we were going after. A lot of discussion about maybe depth and dimension, and the building looked too flat, so we added some architectural cornicing and some dimensional detail with some of the trim work. Jumping ahead to the windows and divided lights at the elevation facing the canopy, there was a lot of glazing, a lot of storefront, so we wanted to break that up, add some mullions and muttons to again give some sense of scale. There was discussion about the lattices; it wasn't really favored, so we wanted to replace those with some more true architectural features, and we also wanted to look at ways to maybe accentuate the Boston Post Road elevation, which is really our front of the building. So we did address that with adding some double hung windows and some transoms, getting rid of the lattice panels with the exception of the rear elevation. The overall proportions were questioned. Maybe at the entry tower, it felt like it was too big. So again, we made some changes with that, making it a little bit smaller, reducing the depth, reducing the height, trying to make it a little bit more proportionally consistent with the building architecture. The height of the gable and the roof pitch was questioned. We did change that from, again, very subtle, but we think it does help to change from a 5 and 12 pitch to a 6 and 12 pitch.
James, Liz Geiger here. Can you, while you look at your own talking points, can you show us the picture first of all the commonly seen of the actual, is that okay?
Amy, Amy, why don't you jump ahead to slide number 19?
It's easier to see while you're talking.
Absolutely. Amy, jump ahead to slide number 18 and 19 and 20.
Yeah, and just for all, this is Sean, just for all, it's page 13 and page 15 in the spiral bound book. Page 13 and 14 are the prior, and 15, 16, and 15 and 16 are the new.
And I do want to point out that the printed copies in front of you are pretty complete, with the exception of last night. We did upload some updated renderings to the town website, and I apologize if those didn't make it into your printed material, but we will show those, and that has to do with the canopy, which I'll talk about in a minute. So again, on what you're seeing below is the Boston Post Road elevation, and again, I was talking about the double hung windows and the transoms that we were introducing there to, again, break up that facade. We also, again, we talked about cornice lines and detailing. So that Boston Post Road elevation, we know is very tall. We're trying to break down the scale. So we have the lower base, which we're using a fiber cement material. And then the upper portion of that gable, we've introduced a shingle. So again, we've got that little bit of interest with the materiality and the shadow lines. We've got nice deep architectural rakes on which you'll see from the perspectives, but again, to give that sense of depth and shadow on that elevation. I talked about the roof pitch, how we changed that from a 5 and 12 to a 6 and 12. It does increase the building height a little bit, but it was non-consequential for what we felt was a good proportion to that elevation. Very, in our mind, it was not as obtrusive as the old Duchess, which had that big gable, a lot of roof massing. Talking about the roof features, we changed on the dormers and on the main entrance, which is that on the screen there is that the upper slide, that's the main elevation. We eliminated the gable hips, the hip roofs that we had before, both on the dormers and on the entrance, again, trying to be consistent with the architectural colonial revival style that we've decided to introduce here. So again, that was just small tweaks in some of the elements that we had. I talked about the rework of the facade. There was some comments made about maybe the entrance doors, about introducing some pediments, some decorative pediments. We went with more of a transom, and again, you can see on that upper elevation just the muttons and the grills that we added. Again, we were trying to balance the life safety aspect and the visibility to the pumps with creating some architectural interest. And so we've introduced that horizontal line in the muttons at the top there. There was request for physical samples, which I'll talk about in a minute because I don't want to distract from the elevations that I'm talking about. So we pulled together some samples. There was some discussion about just the site lighting and the fixtures that were presented, that the site lighting didn't talk to the building light fixtures, and that one was modern and one was a little bit more traditional. We've moved away from the building sconces. You can see from the elevation, we removed those. Hopefully in your package, you can flip back to the previous submission, just again, for reference as to where we were and where we're at now. So we've eliminated the building. Thanks, Amy. You can kind of see those. So again, we eliminated those gooseneck fixtures, again, because there was some concerns raised about the light spill, the bulb and what's going to be visible. And so we really just went to hidden fixtures on the building, with the exception of at the entrance, we did provide some decorative fixtures, a very small welcome sign there on that feature. So those were, I'm going to jump into some of the additional comments we received from some letters that were submitted to the board. There were some comments made about just the discount brand of 7-Eleven, and we're not going to architecturally comment on that, but we obviously felt strongly that we're doing a project that's going to serve the community in the neighborhood, and our client was very, very impassioned about that. So we took to heart a lot of the comments that we received. There was some concerns raised about the trash containers and the screening and the location. And so, we did look at that. We wanted to make sure that the trash was located, not visible from Boston Post Road. And obviously we're providing a dumpster screen enclosure as well, just to hide those. There was some comments made from a received letter about using a true wood shingle roof. Again, we considered everything. We had some discussions. We decided to keep with the architectural 3-tab shingle, which again, we feel gives a nice architectural shadow line, and it's consistent with some of the other buildings in the neighborhood. We weren't looking to move to a wood roof at this time, just from a maintenance standpoint. And again, we felt it was contextually appropriate. The canopy, we didn't talk in depth about that last time. So again, the package that you have in front of you does not reflect the changes that we made yesterday. And again, they're very subtle, but it had to do with the canopy. So there were some concerns raised about the detailing of that and the exposed structure that would be visible from a high elevation. And so we did consider and put on a mansard, which you can see in that rendering goes 4 sides on the canopy. And again, it's to try and marry the canopy with the architecture of the building, but also it is open at the top because we do have some elements on there, specifically the fire canisters for the fire suppression system, that need to be inspected. And, again, it will help block from, I'm specifically talking about the neighboring building from a high elevation. It'll block that, but it won't hide it. So we're trying to kind of compromise with that element. There was some concerns raised about odors and how we were going to mitigate those. Again, I think the positioning of the site really addressed some of those concerns. Again, the fuel canopy is on the far side of the site, where again, these concerns were being raised, I think, from the neighbor. So again, we have the fuel side about as far away from the adjacent property as we can. We don't have any doors on that elevation facing the neighbor, which again, we're not worried about odor spill from inside the building. But if there were, again, we don't have any doors on that elevation. There was also concerns here. You can see that real elevation. Thanks, Amy, for guiding us, of the mechanical equipment on that elevation. So we are putting all of our equipment on a flat roof, which is very similar to the way the Duchess was handling their equipment. Previously, we had submitted a very low, a 42-inch open rail guardrail system, just really to provide some safety up at that flat roof. So we revisited that. We introduced a 5-foot tall fence. Again, that's going to provide screening from the ground level, which you can see in the perspective. From a high elevation looking down, it's not going to block that equipment, but it will do considerable blocking from a ground level. There was some comments made about the signage. And Amy, if you can just flip back one slide or maybe to the rendering. Yeah, so that Boston Post Road elevation, we previously, if you advance one more, you can see coming north on Boston Post Road. There was some concerns raised about previously had some striping on that elevation that said 7-Eleven. and we revisited that. We removed the corporate brand striping and just have the very simple 7-Eleven logo there. So again, we took that into consideration.
We're going to pass over the signage part right now.
Sure. Okay.
I appreciate it.
The last few ones, I will just say that there were some concerns around landscaping and vegetation, which I'll defer to our civil team on that one, who's represented by Luke DeStefano from Bowler, and lighting. Those are the last two, which again, we can kind of focus on the building and the architecture and defer to some of the site elements. So I know that was a lot to take in, and I appreciate everybody's time. But again, hopefully I was able to kind of reframe what we talked about and maybe some of the efforts here that we made to address these concerns.
Okay. That's great, James. Yeah, well, yeah. Let's get all into this a little bit further here. I appreciate that great broad recap, and it sounds like you guys addressed a lot of things and majority of things that we spoke about in our first meeting. I'm going to open it up. I will make a comment to you guys. Well, you know what? Let the board jump in. I'll circle back to like your relation to the other buildings and the pictures you guys included in your presentation. And landscaping, we will go over that. For the ARB members, I'd like to go back and give them the chance to talk about landscaping specifically, but let's focus in on the building, and we can also address questions of the canopy for what you guys find relevant, materials for that, et cetera. So David Humphrey, do you want to lead us off?
Sure. David Humphrey, ARB member. Definitely appreciate, some of the updates you've made. I think I'll probably just throw out a few questions, make a couple comments, and then we'll go through the numbers and maybe circle back to a couple of things. One question was regarding the dormer windows. This is not a huge detail, but I think the kind of quality of this final design will depend on all of these aesthetic elements kind of coming together. So dormer windows, you have a divided light that's 9/9. I just wondered whether the conscious choice to be different than the 6/6 of the double hung windows below, instead of matching 6/6 divided light.
Sorry, this is James from HFA. So is it a comment just regarding the? Let me just clarify. So the dormer windows we were showing a double hung. The intent was that the 6/6 on the lower would match the upper. So is the comment or to change those to a 9/9 light?
One or the other. I was just.
Oh, I see.
Was there a conscious decision to have it be different? It sounds like your intent was to have them be the same, and maybe it just needs to be updated.
Yeah. I think our intent would be to match. I mean, again, we were playing around with a lot of proportions in different windows. And I will point out, just a point of clarification on those dormer windows, they would be blacked out, so you cannot see into the empty dormer. Again, it's just kind of the way that things get rendered, but those would be black spandrel glass. And then the lower windows that you see, the double hungs would also be a black spandrel glass, because they do not look into the store just based on the layout. You'd be looking into restrooms or some non-relevant areas. And so we felt like the black would give the best visual appearance, that it was a true window, so that glass typically renders black when you look at it from a distance, except at night. But that would be the intent for the double hung windows.
Got it. Okay. So while we're on the black spandrel glass, is that factory applied? Does the Anderson 200 series come with an option for black glass?
Again, this is James with HFA. Specifically, I'm not sure. I think we'd work with our rep to see what was available. I know in the past we've had it done, but I don't know off the cuff what window manufacturer we used with those.
Okay, so David Humphrey here. So potentially it wouldn't be an Anderson 200. It would be, if you do want to go with the black glass, it might be a different manufacturer that would allow you to do that. I think Pella has some options for that.
Yeah, I know. Again, James with HFA, I appreciate the comment. I know we submitted an Anderson 200 series in the package. So that would be more of a design intent feature of what we're looking for. We were showing the 200 series is a vinyl clad window double hung, and so that would be the intent, and we can work with the manufacturer to get that spandrel glass to work. And excuse me, I do want to point out too, because it was also included in the package, on those double hung windows, the simulated divided light would be what would be spec'd out, or the intent there, and that was included in the material package.
Okay. To finish my comments on the dormer, I think probably the width of the window trim, you would want to match the double hung windows below. And then I think a more substantial corner board would really help. I'd be interested to see whether even the overall width of the dormer might be increased. They just feel a little small considering the mass of the roof. Do you have any pictures of the black glass that you're proposing, whether it's Andersen or somebody else? It's tough to kind of envision what this would look like in person. And while I appreciate the replacement of the lattice with actual windows, having the black glass, I'm just trying to picture what that would actually look like and feel in person.
Sure. This is James from HFA. As we're kind of talking here with this discussion, if I do have a photo maybe on my desktop. I'll see if I can work behind the scenes here to pull that up as we kind of roll through the board here.
Yeah, I think when we start to talk about coming back to a few things, I think some more information related to black glass would be helpful, and whether you looked at any other options, something frosted. I understand that what's behind these things does not allow you to have anything that would be see-through, but it would be nice to see whether there's anything else other than just the black that might be possible. And I assume the storefront is all clear glass. It just in the rendering, it looks like it's the same.
This is James from HFA. Yeah, that's the intent, that the aluminum storefront system, which is facing the canopy, that would be a clear glass, where anything that's a double hung window would not be transparent. That would be the black that we're referring to.
Okay. I think kind of my last comment before I pass it on is whether you had done any designs with a different masking of the entrance portal. I think that's one of the things that we talked about last time. I think it does look better with the fiber cement siding application. It still feels, quite heavy and large. I'm also wondering whether the, essentially columns of that entrance canopy might be sided in, more of an AZEK application or composite application to represent, more of a column that's holding that up versus having the vinyl run down that vertically. Did you have any revisions that were applied to the model that were different than what we're seeing?
Yeah, again, this is James from HFA. I mean, again, we took all the considerations. We reviewed a lot of different things with the client. I know the board was very vocal about being involved with that process, and what we wanted to do was present a scheme that we felt was addressing the comments, and we looked at different color options that we felt like could be considered by the board. Again, it's hard to say, well, we looked at X, Y, and Z, and trying to keep the topics and discussions focused. That's all.
Okay, so there weren't any alternate designs for the entrance.
We're submitting this design. There were no alternates submitted.
Okay. Okay, that's all I'll say for now.
Thanks,
Hey,
guys.
this is Sean from the ARB. Can I ask all members of the ARB and guests to please mute your mic because we're getting echo feedback all the way through if you're using a speaker and your video camera at the same time. Thanks.
Thanks, Sean. Liz Geiger here. Okay. Sherry, I see that you actually are still unmuted, FYI.
I'm still unmuted.
Yes, you are.
Wait. What
There
about
you are.
now?
You're still on, Sherry. You can play. There you go. Next up, we have Allison Hughes and then Sherry for comments. Go ahead. Thanks, Allison.
Allison Hughes, ARB member. Where the, it's hardy board, is that what you're using as the siding?
This is James from HFA. Yes, we were proposing that the hardy clapboards on the lower portion, and then on the gable ends, that would be the hardy shingles.
How does the brick, where the brick and the hardy board meet on the vertical members, how is that handled? Is it set in from the brick? Does the brick set out a little bit, or I think my question is, I don't understand the use of the inset hardy board into those areas. You understand what I'm talking about? No.
James from HFA. No, are you? Is it in relation to the brick below and then the hardy above and what that?
No, this other one, the vertical members, the vertical brick elements at the corners.
Sure. Again, this is James with HFA. So those, how the hardy butts up and marries against the brick on those piers. Is that the question?
Yes.
Okay. So again, James from HFA, our intent is that we would have a depth. So we're using those brick pilasters as a way to also break up that facade, and so there would be a planar depth, albeit not a huge 4 inches, but a depth enough where the siding could die into and terminate into the brick panels. So we are having to build out that brick in a way so that we conceal the edge of the siding.
I can't get over the feeling that I think there's a lot going on here, and that whole element does bother me a little bit. The brick pilasters, and then the hardy board, and then on the front entrance you have a lot of trim that you've added there. And I'm not so sure I like the contrast in your samples at the town hall. You showed this gray, and the entrance would be at blue, correct?
Again, this is James from HFA. So the renderings depict what our preferred material palette would be, and we envision that the main building would be one shade, and then the entry feature would be another color. In this case, we're using the gray tones, the gray and neutral tones. We did, and thanks, Amy, if you slide to, yeah. So again, this slide, and it's obviously depending on how it's printed or how it visually shows up on screen, it's a little bit different. So the intent here is to use some neutral colors. Our recommendation, or what we were presenting as our base, was the pearl gray, and then the aged pewter would be the entry feature, and then using that same pearl gray on the shingles. At the town hall, Amy, if you can flip to the next slide, we did want to present some alternative colors for the board to consider if they felt like the base colors were not appropriate. And so that's where the blue and the green were submitted. So in this particular palette, the blue, Booth Bay blue, would be paired up with the cobblestone. And again, only the entry feature we were looking at to be an accent color. And then in the next slide here that Amy's going to show, again, another particular color palette option where the main entrance tower would be the green for consideration. But what we were presenting in the renderings is our first choice, but we did want to provide some options to the board for consideration.
Okay. And David Humphrey, I just wanted to mention that at the Trader Joe's building that they just did a couple of years ago or a year ago, they used a black spandrel glass at the one end in the Chase Bank because of privacy issues for the bank. And it looks quite nice, and it does solve the problem of creating a certain rhythm of windows, and I appreciate the use of that rather than the lattice that you used on the previous. That's all for now.
Thanks, Sherry. Thanks, Allison. Next up is Sherry Green, and then we have Dave Riley. By the way, ARB members, I should mention, if either of you guys have anything you'd like to show from your desktop or look at the presentation as well, Fred online can do a screen share, and you can show your files as well if that's helpful. So Sherry, you're still on mute, but when you're ready. Allison, you need to go on mute for us, please. Thanks. There you go, Sherry.
There, okay. All right, let's see. Well, I very much appreciate the added double hung windows rather than the lattice on the post road side. I think that's a huge improvement. I am still very bothered by the scale and the size of the entrance. I don't think I have it solved yet of what I'd like to see, but I think it still looks very unwieldy. I agree with Allison that it's very busy looking. And I wonder if when I went over and looked at the materials at the town hall, I was kind of taken with the canyon brick and the shale brown and wondered if that softened with the gray, the hardy plank would make it a little more uniform and not quite so broken up. And it would also tie back to the building, to the west or the south or whatever, headed in toward Darien, the more modern building. I think we've got a lot of brick buildings down at this end of the post road. And this just, to me, it looks like just another one of the bank buildings or the restaurant across the street. And I just wonder if maybe just changing the brick out to this lighter canyon brick and the shale brown might solve some of that issue of busyness, of breaking things up so much. But I feel like the entrance is still very unwieldy. So those are my comments for right now.
This is James from HFA. If I talking about maybe the busyness, and there was another comment about the brick. Is there a feeling that if those vertical brick elements were eliminated and we strictly had just a traditional base, whether it be the brick or stone, that would help reduce some of that? Again, I call it the busyness that we're feeling on that front elevation. So I guess what I'm suggesting is it those vertical brick elements, if those are removed and the stone material, albeit brick or the canyon stone, if it were kept to that 3-foot height, would that appeal to the board?
Are you talking about the brick on the bottom of the sort of posts on the entrance?
Again, James from HFA. So no, I'm suggesting those vertical elements. So we would basically stop any stone or brick, keep it below 3 feet, and no masonry above the 3 feet. Again, I'm just hearing comments about how maybe trying to reduce some of that materiality above and how some of the materials, and so just keeping it below 3 feet would be a more traditional approach, with a kind of stone base and a siding above.
Again, this is Sherry Green. I think that would help. Visually, my eye goes right to the entrance area, and it just seems really uncomfortably awkward. That might help. I think that might help. I don't know how the board feels about changing. I'm sort of changing in the middle of the stream here with looking at this canyon brick instead of the red. Did I just lose everybody? There we go. I'm looking at the alternate color, number 2, Canyon brick as a consideration, and feeling like it would tie back into the building next door, the big contemporary office building. Those were my thoughts when I looked at the materials today.
Thanks, Sherry. Okay. And so, James, you proposed a good question. That this is Liz Geiger here, Chairman. You posed a good question. Board, as you, I think everyone's gonna, keep discussing materials. But if you have specific answers to James' question about the brick and its continuation or stop, let's address that as well. I know I have comments on it, but I'm going to let other board members speak if that's okay. Next up, we have David Riley and then Sean Brown.
David Riley, ARB. Yeah, I think the other board members are touching on a lot of the, I think the primary elements that are, I think, concerning to everybody. The massing of the entry. In my case, also the dormers, well, kind of elements that help break up the roof. I think the proportioning on those, to Dave Humphrey's point, needs to be looked at. My thought on it was possibly even matching 2 double hungs from below, and just doing like 2 dormers, making them larger, maybe even setting them into the roof would be, I think, proportionally work a little better. But again, a lot of the focus goes back to that big entry gable. And while it accomplishes directing people into the entrance, it I think has got some scale issues, and I think the materials, how they marry into the rest of the structure, there needs to be some additional thought put into that. I'm kind of, I think part of our role is we've been presented with this project, and this is, when you say the client I imagine is 7-Eleven, and this is their interpretation of what Darien would want, but also Darien is in some ways the client as well. And I know designing through committee is an arduous task, but here we are. So just take this for what it is. My thought on it is, why are you adhering so strictly to this colonial aesthetic when you have, again, this canopy structure that is just outside of it, and your kind of reaction or your addressing of it with, adding that roof element to it, I think speaks to you sort of seeing that sort of conflict happening as well, and that this is a gas station, this is a convenience store, and should they be treated as such, and at least on this side of town, maybe even look toward that more traditional form, something that evokes what the convenience store is, but bring it up a notch because of the town that we live in and the expectation of having a little bit more of a sense of higher design. To that end, I was thinking that rather than the gable entrance, why not replicate the canopy that is happening at the gas pumps? There's a way that can work into it, and that kind of led me down a road of going on to looking at like Getty Images and a number of case studies of convenience stores and similar projects that kind of take it up a notch and really could, in some ways, as far as a departure, address some of the concerns that seem to be kind of a common theme throughout the review from this board. And, again, I'm not asking you to completely throw everything out, but at the same time, I'm asking whether there's consideration to looking at these sorts of these approaches. If it's okay, if I could share the screen, I do have a few images of other projects that I just pulled off the web. Can people see these, or how do we do the sharing?
This guy here, 1 second, Dave. Fred's gonna link you in. Give it 1 second here.
Okay. So, and again, this isn't what I'm proposing, but again, these are ideas, and this is my markup on it, in which, I was looking at proportions between the dormers, this expansive roof that seemed like the rhythm of the dormers was not really playing well. They responded to what was below. There was some, kind of this distance to this distance were not matching. You have such a strong element here. I was like, well, why not just take it away and look at pulling that canopy in? And, and I agree with the brick elements as being, these are kind of a little distracting in terms of breaking up the facade of just keeping a base and wrapping the corner with the material, either with corner boards or at least keeping the language of the siding and the shingles working around. But at that point, I was like, well, take it this far, why not take it even further? And again, just a quick image, not a full case study, but just some ideas about where it could possibly go. And I'm just curious as to the board's thoughts on that, whether taking it to a convenience store kind of honesty about what it is, but making it a little bit more of a architectural feature at that, very kind of busy intersection. We've got a lot going on at that side of town, of a lot of eclectic types of buildings, none of which, I shouldn't say none of which, but very few of which are really in that colonial sort of aesthetic. You go to the other side of town where, like the Danny Cycles and the other Roost, those buildings were done in a very traditional way, which was appropriate because of where they were relative to neighborhoods, how the Post Road is set up, a much more residential kind of, avenue going through there. On this side of town, you're working into car dealerships, more commercial spaces, and to try to insert a colonial building into that might not come off the way that everybody sort of, maybe reacted to what we would want. So that's, I'm not addressing specific elements as much as the overall aesthetic. One other comment I do have, and it's more of a question, is are there any EV stations at this, or are there any designations for where they could go? Because there are electric vehicles, and you see Teslas all over the place around here, and there's going to be others, and there's going to be more. So it seems to me that that's an opportunity that could be had here. If you look at the one image of this building, there is an EV station with designated parking. So that's something that I think is may not have been, if it has been addressed, I just hadn't seen it, but I think it's something that should be taken into consideration. So
this is James with HFA, and if I speak out of turn here, my group will correct me. I believe at this time we don't have any proposed EV stations on the site plan. So the other comments, I don't know if there was necessarily a question in there. I would kind of defer to the board here to see if what the consensus is about the architectural style, and if the style that we presented is not acceptable, just for panel discussion, just so we can kind of get some direction and feedback.
Dave Riley here again.
If I may, this is Dorothy Fleischman from 7-Eleven. So electric charging stations are completely inefficient at a facility like ours, since cars require hours of charging before they can go off. I've looked into the issue extensively across a huge convenience store network. They're suitable in office buildings, places where people park for hours, not at a convenience store fuel station, until the batteries are much more efficient. So that's why there's nothing reflected here, because they don't really work.
Yet.
Yeah. So they can always be added. I mean, that's an electrical line and a station, and Tesla would be happy to put them in convenience stores. And the reason that they don't, I mean, they do it rest areas, but it still doesn't even really work there. If you go to rest areas, no one's really charging their car there because they can't go anywhere or achieve any mileage from that charge, from an hour charge. It just doesn't work.
Dave Riley again. Okay, thank you. Again, it's a question,
No
but
worries.
I appreciate you addressing it.
Sure. And then in terms of the designs that you're showing, frankly, I love them. We have our new branding is entirely this kind of image. And so we, when we look at the town we're going into, the presence that competitors establish in the market, we have to make a choice. So we thought and possibly if we came in with the kind of modern, more contemporary, more, I hesitate to use the word avant-garde, but a little edgier design, we had an equal shot of getting shot down on that. But people would say, "Oh no, we can't have that in our town." So we tried to take a palatable approach, a least offensive approach, an approach that said we kind of are respecting all personalities in the town and not coming in with something. I mean, we're doing a development in West Haven that's completely different. It's on a very dynamic street with a huge presence to 95. It needs to be loud. We felt like Darien was not the kind of location that needed to do that. It needed to be a little more subtle, a little more gentle, and was the choice we made.
Dave Riley here again. I completely understand. I know that there have been decisions going on probably for months, if not years, leading up to this point. But again, I'm one of the opinions that looks at it the other way of looking at its proximity to 95 and its location in the town as to where that, is this the opportunity to have that slightly more edginess? I think the big black building, office building behind it, maybe kind of even speaks to that a little bit. So again, I think at this point it's somewhat, it's just it's a debate about what the aesthetics, are and what some of the ideas could be. And again, I know it would be a huge reach for you to have to go back to the drawing board to go and, into this sort of a design aesthetic. But I thought some of these elements might be worth just pointing out.
Oh, sure. And thank you, Dorothy Fleischman, 7-Eleven. You'll be seeing these elements in locations that are I'm struggling with the word I want, but much more, they're louder. They're just louder locations. And I do fear, had we come in with this from the beginning, we could have easily gone 2 meetings in and said, you know what, no, this is really too much for us. We're not interested in that. So we did take the more conservative approach, something we thought would be more palatable and just let us come into the market quietly and not create controversy and be dynamic. It just didn't seem to me the place to do that.
Okay.
Liz Geiger here, guys. I've got to keep us moving. Dorothy, thank you. I see there's 2 members, Sherry and Allison. I know you guys want to speak. Is it something related to this exact comment? Because I know this go-to form is frustrating in that we all can't kind of keep an open dialogue and have to go one by one. But Sherry, do you have a comment specifically based on?
I do. I just wanted to thank Dave Riley, who was much more articulate about what I was trying to get out. I would like to see this building relate back to the one next door, the more contemporary building. And thank you, Dave, for going to this trouble to get these new images, because I think there's reason to talk about going forward in that direction. So I just wanted to jump in on that.
Allison Hughes, I agree with Sherry and David, and I think that if you take a look at perhaps something like Shake Shack, I don't mean that it has to be loud, but that is certainly a contemporary type design. It fits very nicely into Darien, I think, and that's all I have to say. But I agree with Dave and Sherry.
Yeah, this is Sherry Green. I agree with that. I was thinking Shake Shack, and I thought that was such a fun design, but it still fits in comfortably, I think.
Thank you. So this is Dorothy Fleischman from 7-Eleven, and I'm just curious why this wasn't raised at the last meeting. There were comments made about this particular building and not any kind of instruction or direction that maybe we should pursue another path.
Dorothy, this is Liz Geiger here. I'm going to jump in on that. My follow-up email or note to you guys actually said I requested you guys go back to the drawing board and present multiple new proposals. You know, like I'm hoping I suggested alternate architectural styles, which we'd have been welcome to. And I suggested in my letter that we weren't really clear on what this style was that you guys were going for, and we're open to all sorts of styles. So and kind of similar on that note. So I thank you guys for working with us through here. Like Dave said, it's very hard to design by panel here. So I feel for you guys in this element, and then coming through now Darien Town after all you've been through. Going back to your presentation, sorry to jump in ARB, but I think it's relative here. You guys show a lot of pictures of the sites, the surrounding sites and buildings across from it. I think it's important to note what buildings are new in Darien and what buildings have been there for 20, 30 years, and kind of make sure that when you're, if this, I don't know if this is being created in a vacuum, but when we're looking at the building and as it applies to the town and this end of the town, as I said in my letter, this is a very key developing area of our town. The Duchess that's currently there, it does have a large, massive roofing, but it overall a very beautiful building, and it's true to its style. The new office park next to it, again, it was a modern design. It's not something Darien's are open to all different styles, but it just, the building came together beautifully in its aesthetic style as a whole. And then I see some of these pictures in here, like the brick building across the street. That is not something of a design standard to compare to. And I don't know if you guys are looking at that saying, well, we're doing better than that, because I don't even want that to probably be on your agenda or the purview here as something that we're going for, because that's something that's, you know, been there for 30 years. So I just kind of wanted to, you know, talk about examples of that and maybe seeing precedent images when we're talking about this. We've got some images from different 7-Elevens across the country that some other ARB members have submitted. And I see you guys have a plethora of different types. I've got one on my computer from your Nantucket one. I've got one that I've seen from Montauk. And again, I think so when you go back to your idea, Deborah, about like why we didn't propose this, I don't think we want to put you in a hole and say you have to design this for Darien. I think it's just picking a style, being true to it, being authentic to it, and making sure the materials and the whole presentation comes together and are of a very strong quality.
This is Dorothy Fleischman from 7-Eleven, and I think we've done that. I think we've tried to be true to this style. I mean, we have plans in a can. We can pull them off the shelf of these buildings because they are plans in a can, and we're happy to do that. There's a number of more contemporary, more diverse, more little edgier buildings for sure. We can do that.
Okay.
What we tried to do was be true to the design that we did, in keeping with, I mean, the car washes, the gas stations. There's not a lot of edginess on the street. There's not a lot of, I mean, we didn't look at the building across the street and say, well, let's just do slightly better than that. We really tried to do elements that are frankly much more costly in our system than pulling the plan in a can of the designs you've seen, because I'm familiar with them. You know, I know where they come from, and that's fine. And there's a lot of integrity in that, and there's a time and a place for that. And if that's what the town is interested in doing, we can certainly pull those plans off a shelf. It's not difficult. This was a much more difficult process. And I really do feel like we did our best job to stay true to the design we were submitting, to take your considerations into, to take your comments into consideration and deliver what we thought you wanted to see in this building type. Had we known you wanted, you know, something edgy, that was not a difficult word to find at the last meeting. I mean, there was a conversation about that, and we have 14,000 convenience stores. There's a plan for you.
Right.
But we tried to do a custom plan for the town. That's all we intended. There's no secrets here. There's no like, you know, bait and switch. That was exactly what we tried to do. We tried to fit in with the street. We tried to be a little better, frankly, than what's on the street, and accommodate your interests and your requests. That's all.
Liz Geiger. Go ahead, Allison.
Allison, I just want to say that I specifically asked the question why you were going in the direction of colonial revival. When you look at the office building right next door, I can remember asking that. And that was kind of my thought process at that point.
Liz Geiger
Sure,
here.
Dorothy Fleischman from
saying-
7-Eleven. We went with other elements on the street. There's many buildings on the street. That's not the only one, and that's why we did it. I mean, there was no magic. It's just, we're in New England. Competitors have set the tone for the kind of building. We thought it fit in nicely on the street. We thought it kind of echoed the Duchess restaurant that was there. It was unobtrusive. It was quiet. It wasn't going to offend anyone. And that's what we were trying to achieve. Just a nice little design.
This is Liz Geiger again. Thank you, Dorothy. I appreciate that. And, you know, I'm sorry if we haven't been more clear about our type. You know, I don't think we want to put you guys in a box and say it needs to be edgy, it needs to be modern, it needs to be this or that. It's just, it needs to be what it is and of a high architectural standard. So, you know, so I don't want you guys to feel that, you know, Dave, I think Dave did a good job saying, like, this is Dave Riley of the board. You know, this is just one idea, one thought. And in my letter to you guys, I said, you know, you can explore multiple. But that said, what might be helpful, I want to continue with our 2 other board members that haven't spoken yet, and then we can kind of circle back. But if it would be helpful, we could send, I have a list of buildings in town that have been done in the last 10 years here that Darien as a community, you know, holds in very high standard, that have really helped define our town and are just, you know, been beloved. So 2 of those, you know, one of those is that black building next to you. It's pretty simple. The new one, and also one of the members mentioned in our last meeting is there's another. It is modern, again, coincidentally, just down from that where Pasta Vita and Orange Theory are. But that said, I can get you a list if it is helpful post our meeting of just buildings and sites in town that might be inspiration. So that's that.
Looking more direction than inspiration. I think I would appreciate being put in a box, since we're clearly going to be continued to the next meeting. I think that I would really appreciate understanding and knowing specifically what you want. We've tried, and then there were entirely new elements introduced tonight. So the box might be really helpful.
Okay, that's good to know, Dorothy. Okay, James, sorry.
Sorry, there's just James from HFA, just to pick up on Dorothy's comment. So am I understanding that the colonial revival here that we're presenting is not acceptable, and that we should not continue down that path? I guess I'm trying to get consensus as to, you know, what's appropriate, what's not.
Dorothy Fleischman from 7-Eleven, and I have to say that I will be incredibly disappointed if that's the case, because this is direction that could have been given at the last meeting. This is direction we could have had during the course of this meeting, in preparation for this meeting. So picking a giant white wall and saying hit a point on it is really unfair. It's just unfair.
Dorothy, if I think David Humphrey here, if I could just make one comment. I think part of why we're having this discussion and talking about some different options is because the design that was presented last time and the design that was presented tonight, in our opinion, didn't quite fit together. There are clearly some elements that we're talking about that we would like to see improved. And if what was delivered tonight, you know, fit a little bit better and potentially, you know, took some of the things that we talked about last time into consideration a little bit more, maybe, you know, there were 2 different designs of this that were presented. You know, we may not be going down this path, but something just isn't right about this design. So I think that's part of why we're talking about something different. So, you know, I get part of your frustration, but at the same time, we're having this because, you know, we're not seeing a design that, you know, we feel great about and just saying we want to see something that's not colonial. The design that was presented just didn't quite work the way it was presented.
Thank you. Dorothy Fleischman from 7-Eleven. I think I understand what you're saying, but we don't read minds. So The things that don't quite fit together is really too nebulous. I understand that the entryway may be perceived as being too large. If I'm handicapped and I want to go in there, I need to understand how to navigate that. I need to understand that I can fit through that doorway, that people coming in, people going out, no one's crashing into each other. I mean, I'm thinking about this from a customer perspective, which is really where I start from, is how are customers going to use this building? Because they're not going to use it from an architectural aesthetic standpoint. They're going to actually try to figure out how to come in the front door in a way that they understand they can get their gas, they can go in the door, they can come out the door, and they can do all of that efficiently and safely. So that's customer service is really where I start with this design. And so the front entryway, while it may be not really appealing in terms of generic buildings in Darien, from a customer standpoint, it's important people understand where they walk in the door, and they need to see that. So it needs to be a little larger. So, I mean, I just don't understand. I'm happy to accommodate, and we will do everything we can to do that, but I can't have nebulous. It just doesn't speak to me, and it's just not that specifically. You know, if it's too big, why is it too wide? Is it too tall? You know, I'm sorry, we're a little more granular than this because we're thinking from a customer standpoint. So I would appreciate some more clear direction about that.
Liz Geiger here, Dorothy. Okay, we're gonna keep going here. I will say, like, your board, your agenda is for the customer service. And just so you know, again, I'm not trying to give you a hard time, but our agenda is to work to make this aesthetically pleasing in our town. And we're looking at it from a new standpoint that, you know, that this building works on all, the entire facade works all angles around where we're seeing it. And we want it to be successful in town. That's truly our goal too, is to make sure this is successful.
Well, and it's Dorothy Fleischman, and really, truly, I mean, customer does matter. The people who use this, the people, they matter, and how they envision themselves here, it's important.
Absolutely, absolutely, and that's what. So in Darien, it is important how it looks and feels and interfaces with us day to day on that popular road. So let's keep this dialogue going, and we will try to work to give you guys concrete examples, concrete, more specific, you know, without putting James into a box where he feels like he can't operate because he's doing a design that we set. You know, our goal is not to design it for you, it's to try to guide you. And let me just keep it. Well, let's just keep going. Let me do Sean Brown and then Leslie, and then we'll circle back here.
Well, I mean, this is Sean Brown from the ARB. Hey, James, I appreciate you putting the number on the left column on the street side. It looks good. But I have to tell you, I like the side of the building that faces the post road. I may be juxtaposed to my counterparts, but I do like that one. I do feel like the team has stated on the front, on the pump side, that it's a little busy. And if this design goes forward, I might suggest that the two center brick columns come out. There is one piece I do like that I didn't think I would at first, but as I look at it further, if this building stays the way it is, from the post road side, looking at the side of the entrance, I have to tell you, I do like that white downspout right through the center of that column. So those are my simple comments. I think everybody else has stated a lot more than I have, so I appreciate your time.
Thanks, Sean. Leslie?
Leslie McCauley, ARB member. I think everyone said everything that I would have said, and I'll keep my time for the landscape discussion.
Liz Geiger here, Chairman. Does anyone want to circle back, or I've got some additional points and some wrap up things to kind of continue the dialogue. Would anyone else like to jump in again, or no? Okay. So I have one question for you. Is this proposed to be a 24/7 operating building, and will the lights and functionality be offered 24/7?
Amy Suchins, yes, it's a 24/7 facility. And I think included in the materials you have is the lighting plan, and it does show that we get down to 0 foot candles, or just about 0 foot candles at the property line. So it's very much concentrated lighting in the areas where we need them for safety and security of customers coming back to the pump, or for the visibility from the store out to the pump for any emergencies. But otherwise, the lighting is really tried to be, kept to have a minimal impact on the surrounding area. It's an issue that was raised by the neighboring owner, as well as during our P&Z discussion about, how the lighting levels fit, and, basically with respect to the, there's commercial development on the other side of Post Road, and then residential beyond that. And so it was certainly something we paid close attention to.
Okay. I think we will, with Liz Geiger here, with timing and stuff, we're running, we have 10 minutes left here. We need to circle back to the landscaping plan and lighting plan as a whole. That's a great overview, Amy, thank you. I will give you a couple points I have from myself and 2 ARB members who are not on the call tonight that I've spoken with and gotten some feedback in their absence. Overall, one of my largest concerns is about having Unitas fenestration all the way around. Amy, I don't know if you want to go on mute. I think I hear an echo going through.
Sure.
Okay, that might be better. I don't know if you guys can hear me better. The fenestration all around seems to be broken. Like, this is a building that will be seen from all angles, and largely there is that office building behind it. That's a very successful, popular place in town. Well, they'll be looking into the rear of the building. I think that side of the building needs to be given just as much attention as the front. And the elevation from the Post Road, while I do appreciate the removal of the trellises that seemed somewhat non-functional, putting in black windows and black-filled black windows in a colonial building, I personally don't think is correct. I know one of the ARB members commented that there was a building in town that does use black filler on our windows. It's a very different style and type of building. It worked for that. I don't really see it working for a colonial revival. The materials, James, you brought up specifically about extending the brick. I feel a slight disconnection between, I feel an awkwardness between the marriage of the clapboard and the brick. Is it like a masonry building? And if it's a masonry base, then I'd love to see it just at the base. Or if it's the pilasters, and I think we'd like to see, like, masonry pilasters and then clapboard, but like a definition of those elements separated out versus like, I appreciate the going for depth there. And I think you've kind of accomplished a much more degree of that with the windows and the use of the trim and adding a dormer dormers on the roof. But I'm not seeing the depth achievement as much overlaying clapboard and brick. I'd rather just remove it altogether, or see something, a proposal, an option like that, or an option where it is a masonry strong base or masonry pilasters along those ways. And again, Dorothy, I don't want you to say, give us definite, tell me exactly, because I don't want James to put you in a box and say, do a masonry base. It's the whole picture together. It's got to come, the whole thing has to come together. So these, so I'm just kind of giving you suggestions here. Windows.
Dorothy Fleischman from 7-Eleven, good direction.
Okay. All right, thanks, Dorothy. I appreciate the encouragement. This is good collaboration. The entryway, again, like we kind of harped on this, and I don't have an exact answer for you, but the proportions and the conformity feel wrong. The openness of the door, great. We need a large door. People are going in and out. You need just more than a single door. Handicap, understand that. But it is still too heavy and unproportional, and I don't know how to fix that. There's that empty space above the door. I appreciate the element of a transom, but it starts to get even busier, and that's when we get to this larger picture where this proposed design, the revised, is now even busier and seems like more of a mishmash of styles. And I'm seeing less true. I'm not really seeing colonial revival here. I'm seeing a lot of different takes here. So going back to the entryway specifically, I don't have a specific fix, but all the other board members, it just seems proportionally off somewhere and heavy. I don't know if that's a good enough direction for you, and we could ask again, but I can leave it at that for now. The dormers on the roof, I think, again, the proportions from the dormer to roof line seem a little odd. I thought one of our members had a good suggestion for maybe you want to mirror the windows below, the double set windows, and do dormers that are double set dormers and above, and possibly inlaying them further into the roof. Again, I don't want to say this is the solution, and this comes back because I want you guys to go back and consider if it is, if it is this style, is this the overall look we want to do, or do we want to simplify it, or do we want to change lanes and make this like a simple shingle style building or the modern building? So in looking at it exactly as is, I do like the comment for maybe a double dormer on the roof would be better, and setting them further back in, as one of our other members did suggest today. Going into samples in general, I would be more than happy to send you guys some samples of buildings that have worked in town of all different styles. If you guys want to open it up and come back with different styles for your proposal, or if you guys want to come back and propose 3 colonial revival styles, maybe that's the thing. And one of the ideas I suggested in my letter is seeing things that haven't worked on your end might help us better appreciate what is working and why you're proposing stuff. Because we see like, okay, you tried, more of an inset entryway and it got lost, or, whatever that is. So I don't mean to ramble, but then continuing on, the canopy, I would love to see more detailing there on what the materials are. And I need to see elevations. We need to see as a board elevations there and what the measurements are, what the heights are, the overall size. I see a great rendering, which I appreciate, but elevations there and materials for what is the ground below. Is it also paved cement? Are you doing any sort of pavers, or I don't know, to call it out that special area? And excuse me, Lissy, I'm so sorry. And excuse me, and then the last thing is materials. The materials presented, I really appreciate you guys putting together materials. It is tremendously helpful. All the members went over to the town hall and looked at them. I, like one of the members, appreciate the coloring of the shale brown. I thought that was nice. That is the brick I thought was nicer within this style. I'm open to the red brick in another style, but based on the colors you're choosing for the hardy board, I prefer the grayer style, but I do not think the quality that we saw at town hall is what we need in those veneers. Veneers are great, but I think we need a higher level of veneer here. And that might go back to bringing down the element, the brick element, or even a Connecticut, New England stone element you have here, maybe bringing that back so it's not as costly for you guys, and maybe just doing a masonry base or a pilaster in that, or maybe eliminating it altogether to keep your costs down. Because I understand, we can sympathize that that is an objective for you. Sorry to go on. And then for Amy specifically, I think you've done a lot of this, but as we run out of time, I would love to go through. We have feedback on the landscape plan. I can put some of that in email to you guys, so you don't feel like you have to wait to the next meeting. But we need to go over the landscapes plan because there are a lot of points there, and the lighting and signage we'll address when ZBA gets there.
So. Yeah, so Amy Suchins, for the record, just a couple of quick things to wrap up. We would very much appreciate the landscape comments. We did go back. Bowler went back to the updated tree list and made some of the changes after based on your new list and everything else after the last meeting. With respect to the, other buildings in town, frankly, one of the things that I did early on was we had a very productive and lengthy discussion with staff, Mr. Keating, Mr. Ginsburg, Mr. Denis, and talked about, as Dorothy said, we're coming in, this is the first gas station, brand new gas station in Darien in 30 plus years. Was there anything, that they thought? And I think the struggle that we all had, and Dorothy, I think, explained it very well, is that this is the first new gas station in 30 years. And so I think the idea that we all shared was that we were going to make it a nice building, but we certainly did, and staff, did offer their insight, and we appreciate that as far as, trying to see if there was any kind of guidance. And so hearing this from you, as Dorothy said, I think is very helpful to be able to understand sort of where all of you are. And then the last thing with respect to signage, to the extent that it's a wall sign on the building that is not before ZBA. The only thing we are before ZBA for is with respect to the size, and now with the change to the monument sign, the fact that the fuel price sign would be on the monument. Under the regulations, the fuel price sign needs to be parallel or behind the canopy because of the constraints of the site design. We can't do that, so the variance is related to that. But to the extent that you have any comments about the 7-Eleven logo as a wall sign, that's not before the ZBA. So if there were any comments as far as that, it's only that now monument sign that's before the ZBA. So any feedback otherwise would be appreciated.
Liz Geiger here. As I did comment on, you guys including Roost as part of that sign is going to be unfavorable for us. 7-Eleven, your company's name only, and I know there is an amendment in our guidelines to allow the fuel pricing. Our group has, I don't think we're running out of time, but I will give you that quick feedback about Roost, having that on there.
If we have multiple uses in the building, they are allowed under the zoning regulations to be listed, particularly on a monument sign. I did actually check that after your last meeting. So if there's a specific concern about that, or a belief about whether or not it's allowed, I'm happy to discuss that with Mr. Keating or whatever. But our interpretation of the regulations is that it is allowed.
Okay, great. Okay, good. Other ARB members, anyone want to do some final thoughts or suggestions? Allison?
Liz, Allison Hughes. I just have a question on the 7-Eleven sign on the post road side of the building. Is that proposed to be internally illuminated?
I believe it is. Hold on.
James from HFA, yes, that's an internally illuminated on the Boston Post Road.
Yeah.
And Dave, I'm a little concerned. I'm a little confused about the viability of that under our regulations.
Dave Keating here. I think it could be internally illuminated, provided it's a halo type of look, and the lights are not shining toward the street. They're shining from within the sign toward the back wall and illuminating the area around the wall.
Also, Allison Hughes again, on the monument sign, what are the regulations on that concerning internal illumination versus the pole sign, where I know they can be internally illuminated, but on the monument sign, what is?
Dave Keating here. I'm not sure if the monument sign could be internally illuminated. I can double check that. I think the monument signs generally are externally illuminated, but there is a provision for the gas price signs to be either externally illuminated or to be the digital sign that they can change from within the building.
Thank you.
Liz Geiger here. And Dave Keating, do you know the allotted square footage allowed for this sign? And I believe Amy said at the beginning the proposal for the monument was 46 square feet. Do you have a number, Dave Keating, for what the allotment is? All right.
I don't have that.
I can answer. So we are allowed as a monument sign for the non-fuel price portion, 20 square feet. And for the fuel price sign, we are allowed 12 square feet. So a total of 32 square feet. We are asking for a variance to allow 46 square feet. And the breakdown of that is where we're allowed 12 for the fuel price, we're asking for 17 square feet. And the balance, which is what, 25, I think, 20, yeah, is the 7-Eleven and Roost sign. It's approximately, I think, 31 square feet. 30 square feet.
Okay, Liz Geiger here. Okay, so again, we're going to wait for ZBA to rule on that before, that's their purview, before we comment on it. Okay. So just to summarize, I feel like I've talked a lot and I don't mean to. I said this in my letter. I guess I'll try to say it again. I'd like you guys to go back and present multiple and come back with multiple versions to present, whether that would be multiple versions of this, 2 or 3 versions, at least 2, 3 of this colonial revival style based on the comments we had tonight, the direct comments. And I will again put those in a letter to you guys. Or if it's going back and trying a new design that, is something, different. But again, I think for us as a board, it's hard to give feedback, guide you guys without just saying, just picking a style, being authentic to it. And it's got to be something just that works in the landscape, in the neighborhood and the area as a whole. So if you guys haven't been to town, I know Amy, you live here locally, and Deborah, I don't know about you, James, but I would love you guys to come in and drive around, and I'll take a tour with you guys, and I'll show you some of the stuff we love about town and things that have been successful, because we want you guys to be successful.
Yeah, and
This
I
is
will
Jay-
to say,
Go ahead, Jay.
and
Go ahead,
we,
Amy.
I think we have, and I think that was, one of the things that I, in particular, that there are certain elements of this building that I think are reminiscent, of areas closer to downtown, and trying to draw on that, as opposed to, I've been to that Shake Shack plenty of times too, and I think the surrounding area is a little bit different there as well, and so. Trying to, as I said, one of the things that we did try to talk about early on was, how this building fits in. Were there any things, anything truly big picture with the staff, knowing that we were, frankly, the first thing, like I said, in more than 30 years that we should be looking at, and all these things. And I think there were some that we just made educated guesses on. So again, if there's something, particular, we'd be happy to hear it.
And this is James from HPA.
And
If I could
also
just add on, would the board be amenable? I mean, I think obviously meeting once a month is challenging, but if design options were presented, to have some back and forth prior to the meeting, so that at least when we came to the meeting, it was something that's been agreed upon or looked at, that, would the board be amenable to that? I think that would help expedite our process here that we're going through.
Liz Geiger, absolutely, James, absolutely. We don't want you guys to have to come to us with one style and feel like you guys are in a box. This is a dialogue. So Dave Keating's office email is always open, and he's great about contacting us and putting us in the loop. And it's hard to say it's hard to get what the feels and what it is. When we see it, when it's right, it's right. It comes together. And there's just no way to pinpoint what that's gonna look like, what style it's gonna be. Dorothy, I can see that you want to say something.
Oh, no, so it's Dorothy Fleischman from 7-Eleven. So I'm a Connecticut girl. I grew up in Bethel. Spent my whole life there. I've been to Darien a number of times. I know it very, very well. So we're trying to do the best design we can to accommodate the transition between South Norwalk and Darien. That's a big stretch of road with a lot of personality. And I think it just needs a transitional element. And that's what I was striving for.
Liz Geiger, I appreciate that, and I agree. I think that's what we're looking for too. You guys are embarking and defining a new part of our town that is becoming more and more popular and will be getting developed over time. So making sure this is a strong, effective building will speak volumes for our town. So we're really invested in it with you guys. Dave Keating.
Dave Keating here. Liz, unfortunately, because of the time constraints on the other meeting, we literally have to wrap this up within 60 seconds. So I will try to do an email tomorrow to the members to see if we can have a special meeting, maybe the first week in November, if we can get enough members who can do that, to have it as an opportunity to start working on the Corbin Drive sign package, which is the next item on the agenda. And also, if they can get us anything from 7-Eleven to look at that point, we could try to do that as well. I can't promise that the board members will be available, but I think that'll be better than trying to wait until the 17th of November, which is our next regular meeting.
Thanks, Dave Keating. All right, it's 7:37 p.m. We're going to close this. We're going to push the ARB number 21 to our November meeting and close this meeting for the evening. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.